For years, the once bustling underground oceans of Europa had fallen eerily silent. Following the loss of communication with Earth, the people of Europa were left to suffer the consequences of attrition. With power sources dwindling, many began to die from the lack of oxygen, gasping for breath in the dark underwater caverns. And if they dared to venture out in search of uranium for energy, they risked being hunted by the monstrous creatures that lurked in the depths. To make matters worse, the elevator that once provided a lifeline to the surface had long since been destroyed without any reason knowing why, leaving the people of Europa with no hope of escape. It seemed as though the end of humanity was inevitable, but then a low hum began to fill the waters, growing louder and closer with each passing moment. It sounded like a generator, muffled by layers of fabric, and soon the darkness was illuminated by a bright light, revealing a new star in the ocean caves, the Europa Coalition. The Europa Coalition, they had not forgotten about the people of Europa. They worked tirelessly to find a solution to the power crisis that had left the people of Europa. And to combat the monsters that had stolen their existence, the people of Europa were left in a state of despair, feeling like they were alone in the dark, without a hope for the future. However, as the hum grew louder and the light grew brighter, the people of Europa began to feel a glimmer of hope. They realized that they were not alone in the darkness, and that someone out there cared about their plight and was willing to fight for them. Finally, the Europa Coalition arrived, bringing with them a new source of power that was sustainable and could keep the colonies running for years to come. This power was fusion reactors. It was first being developed on Earth, but was never fully successful. The Europa Coalition invented a proper one, and it was much more than enough to inspire themselves just as they inspired others for hope. With this technology, they had no worries for power now, and they began instantly hooking them up to their submarines and bases and showed extreme promise. They began going around to pass this technology to the people of Europa. With the new power source installed, the people of Europa were no longer trapped in the darkness. However, the monsters of the sea still posed a great threat to the colonies, and the Europa Coalition knew they had to act quickly to defend their new allies. The Europa Coalition had made weapons for the fleet. One of the most effective was the railgun, a high-powered gun that fired electromagnetic pulses. The pulses could disable electronics and stun the monsters, making them easier to defeat. Others were such as the harpoon guns and coil guns that fired magnetic projectiles at high speeds. As the days went by, the people of Europa and the Europa Coalition worked together to explore the underwater caves and push back the monsters that lurked within. It was still very difficult from the massive amounts of monsters that lurked in the sea, but slowly but surely, it began to rack up in speed, slowly tearing through the infested parts. Though they realized after a certain death there were monsters beyond their capabilities, so the people of Europa as a whole have decided not to head deeper into the seas than they already are. But as the Europa Coalition continued to battle the monsters of the sea and bring light to the dark underground oceans of Europa, their efforts did not go unnoticed by the other nations and factions of Europa. Soon, representatives from other colonies within Europa began seeking to form alliances and learn from the coalition's success. Among them were the opportunistic pirates of the Jovian Union, who saw the new source of power brought by the Europa Coalition as a valuable prize. They attempted to raid the bases of Europa Coalition as they did not wish to accept the Treaty of Tax, a 10% tax for saving their people. But the Coalition's advanced weapons and tactics immediately drove them back when they realized what was going on. But by far the biggest problem the Europa Coalition had was with the Church of Husks, men and women driven to the point of insanity, having fanatical religious beliefs. Beliefs that the monsters of the sea are divine beings that should be worshipped and revered. They saw the Europa Coalition's efforts to combat the monsters as a direct threat to their beliefs, and launched a series of attacks on the Coalition's bases. At first, the Coalition struggled from the surprise attack and their unconventional tactics, which included injecting parasitic eggs into a victim, to transform them slowly into a monster that would also be parasitic, causing internal conflict within the Europa Coalition. So the Europa Coalition immediately began researching an antidote to counter this parasitic egg injection. They found that the drug atropine would kill the parasite inside. This new weapon instantly turned the tides, and the Coalition made a new goal to wipe out the Church of Husks, as they were a direct threat to humanity. They instantly began tearing their bases apart, and the people included. In the end, they had no bases, but the believers were still among the people, hidden, randomly injecting users with it as experiments. The coalition, now feeling successful in conquering their threats, they are now beginning to look for a new future, one off Europa. With the elevator still being repaired, they wonder what they would find when they looked at Earth once more. What happened to the people in communication? Why was the elevator destroyed in the first place? These are the questions the people of Europa asked. They hope to find answers in their future as they continue their progression through the deep oceans of Europa.